Hello and welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the problem with that first of the 3/16ths in the bass that is going to overlap on top of the kick. So we're going to get frequency masking, we're going to get phase issues, and we know that Psy-Trance is all about creating that solid punch between the kick and the bass, making sure that they sit together and work together really, really well. So we can't really do this by adjusting the, say, sidechain or the volume shaping that is imitating sidechain. If I put that Flux Mini 2 back on, where we've just got a basic sidechain simulation, you can see it's lowering that volume there of that first 16th. And if we take a look at A1 gate, have this up here. It's starting to change the shape of the waveform. And that's going to be a serious problem for our track. So we don't want to put sidechain on just yet. That is just like a final stage. So we're going to leave Alex Hilton's A1 trigger gate here, just off screen, so we can still access it quickly. And we're going to go to the bass, and I'm going to actually duplicate this bass. So we have two tracks. The first track is going to have this missing. So the first 16th, so just the last 2/16ths of each beat. And then the same goes for this one. We're actually going to remove the last two and leave the first one. So we've still got the same bass progression, just over two channels. And what we can do with this is remove a certain fundamental of this, so the fundamental frequency. So if we take a look at what that looks like, we're going to load in an instance of span. And how you can get your hands on span, you can just type in Vox and go span. And you can see there, first one is the free one. Then you can see from here, you don't need an account. You can just simply click on your download. So we want the VST3 for Mac. You might want it for Windows. And that'll download automatically without an account. And you just install it like any other VST and then restart the DAW and it will appear in there. So what we want to do with span is identify the fundamental frequency. Now the fundamental is just the original note played, which is F sharp. So in octave 1, F sharp. Now we can double check this by clicking on mode and high resolution. And when we hit that note, you can see the fundamental is the first one there. And at this section here, you can see the key. And you can see it's on F sharp 1, exactly the right octave and right key. All the rest are harmonics. So we need those to be able to hear the bass, but we can remove that fundamental. So we know that fundamental is something that we can tame a little bit in Vital. Now, how we do this is a little bit more advanced than what you might be used to, especially if you've only just downloaded Vital. But we have this preset that we've already loaded in, Psy-Craze, and make sure that we are selecting the right track here, which is the 16th isolated on its own. And we go into the oscillator here by clicking this pencil icon. We have a table of lines here that might just be a little bit overwhelming to look at, but we can change how this sound appears. So if you look up here, when I click this one, we can change how that waveform looks. So what we can do is just move this out of the way. I'm just going to load span up again. Usually I have dual monitor set up here so we can see it on different areas. It's a bit cramped. We can remove the fundamental just by clicking this one here and moving it down, and you're going to see the difference happen and hear the difference, should we say, in the sound. So I'm just going to put that there so we can see the fundamental. So we're left with the rest of the sound, but no fundamental. So we've got all the harmonics in place, everything there so we can audibly hear this sound, but suddenly we haven't got that punch from the sound till we put this back. Now the difference between doing this with an EQ and doing it this way is we're actually hard baking the removal of the fundamental frequency with this, whereas if we use an EQ, we're going to start shifting the phase around, we're going to remove the low frequency, it's going to alter how the rest of it sound, and we want it to sound the same as the original track. We just want that fundamental removing without actually changing the phase, the position, everything else. And we don't want to change that phase position or any of the phase of the sound just on the basis of we need a nice hard driving low end. So I'm going to remove this again. So we're just left with those harmonics for the bass. Now we can go out of Vital, we don't need it anymore, and we can click out of that. And what we can do is just say bass, and we can put brackets no fund, so meaning no fundamental. So let's have a listen to how that sounds now, and I'm just going to create a third track here. I'm just going to add in the 16th back in here, so we've got something to test it against so we can hear how that sounds. So this is what we had before. And now notice how it sounds a little bit tighter. It still sounds the same, but it sounds tighter. It sounds more cohesive. Back to this one. So you can hear the power of the fundamental really hitting there. And that one sounds like we've EQ'd that fundamental out, which we have, but we've hard baked it into the wavetable. Now this trick is really handy for doing this with all sorts of styles of music if you want to, but it's not necessary, but this works really well in making sure that it doesn't get in the way of the kick. So now we don't really have a problem with the kick overlapping into that bass because there's no fundamental frequency trying to compete with our kick drum. So let's bring our visualizer back over. I've got the bass solo, so the original sound without the fundamental removed. And then when I click unsolo, we've just got these two basses here. So we have this. So like so. So let's have the original first. Let's have a look at how this looks on here. I'm just going to move that to there so I can unsolo it. So note this first 16th, quite loud, not as loud as the rest, but quite loud. And now it's got a lot quieter, but there's still all the harmonics there, just not the punch. So now if we bring that kick in, the only way I can describe this to you how it is working without visually just showing you all the time is the kick seems to have more boom when the fundamental is present, so the original bass before we edited that fundamental out. So if you just listen to the kick drum, and take these ones away and put these ones in. Now the kick sounds short and stabby. So experiment with that. You've got to this stage in the production, just go back and forth on your own headphones with your own, and you'll hear that kick sounds boomy, and then on the other one it sounds quite short and stabby, if not a little bit weaker. And that's what we're looking for to make sure that these do not compete with each other. Now we can go into the bass mix, which is our mix of these two basses, and obviously we set that up at the beginning, so when we made a copy for the fundamental that we were going to remove, you can see now the no fund is also in the bass mix. So let's solo the bass mix. So we did have Flux Mini 2 on during that. So everything that you just saw with the visual looked a bit odd to me, but when I was looking at it, I thought that's normal. You can see now it's the same loudness. So just so you know, the Flux Mini 2 on the bass mix was activated for some reason. I must have accidentally done it, and that's why it looked a bit strange. But if you look now on this visualizer, you can see the same loudness, just not got that full body when that fundamental is removed. But if we go back to this bass, you can see they're all the same. And then we can activate the Flux Mini 2. We can get this back on screen. And then we're just volume shaping it a little bit just to get that extra level of detail. So I don't know if you can hear the differences between the two. One of the basses sounds really sort of crystal clear with the transients coming through, and the other one sounds a little bit muffled. And the muffled one is with Flux Mini 2 on. So this is why I didn't want to just rely on volume shaping or EQ to remove that first fundamental frequency, because we're changing the way the shape of the sound is. So listen again, I'm going to leave it off and you'll hear it's quite clicky on the bass. And then quite subdued when we turn that on. So these are the things that we've got to think about when we're shaping. But with that Flux Mini 2, I've already got it set up how I want, and we can just change, I think, the mix here to sort of blend half in. And you can see that by this visual here. It just helps to take away a little bit of that energy at the beginning. And we've got the first part of this set up. We just need to adjust the kick, which we're going to do in the next episode, and then we can move on to start building the rest of the track.